And the only way to get leverage is look, you can hit rock bottom. I don't recommend it.
Yeah.
It's much longer. It's what does Zig Ziglar say? He says there's the elevator, the escalator at the top is broken. You got to take the stairs. You know.
Yep.
So but the thing is you've had enough experiences in your life where you can go find one thing that was painful, and just use that for the leverage to make the change you need to. Ask God for help, and then you got to take action.
Welcome to Testimonies of Triumph, where real stories of faith come to life. In each episode, we share powerful testimonies of how God transforms trials into triumphs, bringing hope and redemption to everyday lives. Whether you're seeking encouragement, wisdom, or inspiration, you'll hear how God is working today, turning even the darkest moments into stories of victory. Now, let's dive into today's episode and witness the incredible power of God's grace in action. Well, Wally, welcome to Testimonies of Triumph. Appreciate you being here. I know a little bit about your story, and there's hope in this story. So for everyone else who doesn't know what the story is, we're probably going to go to a dark place first. And on the other, there will be hope on the other end. So just bear with us and kind of buckle up. Wally, if you could do me a favor and sort of give everyone a background sketch, a little bit about who you are and maybe what life was like before the wheels fell off and you started to hit rock bottom.
Well, it's funny. And thank you for having me here today, guys.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Excuse me. I always joke, like, some people are, they're like, what was life like? Their life was like this and this and this and this, and mine was like this and this. And like the wheels came off early, unfortunately. You know what I'm saying? And I did my best to keep them on, but how can I say this? My parents were good people. They just weren't great parents, and I think a lot of parents who a lot of people grew up in the 40s, 50s. They got raised by people who believe that children should be seen and not heard. The whole alcohol. There was no child abuse, there was no sexual abuse, none of that, right? So all that got by, and so it impacted them. And it was funny because I read a book once called "The Opposite of Dysfunction is Dysfunction," and it means basically, no, seriously, like, let's just, some people had horrible parents, right? They were just not good parents, and so, and which means they probably didn't have good parents, right?
Yep.
So what happens is as a child, you get one of three things: you got exactly what they got.
Yep.
You got the entire opposite of what they got, which is also dysfunctional.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? If their parents were completely helicopter parents and rode them like a Shetland pony.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm not gonna let that happen. So you can go do whatever you want to do, and your parents are completely uninvolved in your life, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I got what my parents got. My family has, I'm German too, but my family has Italian people on both sides, and Gaudis and Russos. And I don't know if you know anybody who has an Italian family, but there's three methods of communication, right? You get yelled at, you get hit, and you get food.
Okay.
And sometimes,
so wait. Hold on just a second. Food is a form of communication?
It is. It's a form of punishment. It's a form of reward. It's a form of love.
Interesting.
It's a form of like connecting.
Okay.
Go do some reading about Italian families. They do a lot of stuff around the kitchen table. You know what I'm saying? And,
interesting. Okay.
And especially Italian Americans, but I mean, as it is, Roman Catholics, pretty, emotional people as it is, very strong emotions. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And if you're getting yelled at, you're getting loved, basically, is what I'm telling you. But so anyway, so my dad's mom was not a nice lady. But Mimi, she was a Sicilian. Her father was from Sicily, but she was an angry woman, very, very, very bad to my dad and his sister. Okay. And so, and I'm going to give you the big blocks along the way. I'm not going to say we go into detail. So thank you for bearing with me. My dad and mom, they both smoked when they met each other. They both had some anxiety issues. They were both overweight, and they loved each other. But they just. My mom worked. My dad didn't work. He didn't have a job. He just gotten out of the Air Force. And so he took care of me, and so he drank during the day, and he was a pretty strict guy, super angry. My dad was one of those guys that was pretty quiet for a long time. And then you could be on fire next to him and he wouldn't tell you were on fire. He just was that quiet.
Okay.
Yeah, for a while, And so nice guy, big heart, what I'm saying? Did a lot of good things, not the most expressive cat, but it is what it is. But he did a lot of nice things through his life. So, but, when I would make a mistake, I would get punished. And even when I didn't make mistakes or didn't make bad choices, I get punished. And so one of my punishments when I was younger was to be sent to bed without food. And that's kind of, I'm talking about
Oh, okay. I'm
four,
with you.
five,
I'm with you. Okay.
3, 4, 5. Right there's the punishment, right?
Yep.
And then for your birthday, what do you want? And you got anything you wanted. You know what I'm saying? So it's
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yep.
I'm saying.
I'm
So
with you.
anyway,
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that. That's
yep,
helpful.
yep.
Yeah.
And so then I had a binge eating disorder starting at age 6 because
Oh,
I
wow.
was afraid I was going to eat. And so, and the thing is I started using it as a coping mechanism
Sure.
for stuff. And so I was addicted to food starting at age 6. And then I was sexually abused by an extended family member when I was 10. And
Okay.
then I found my dad's porn magazines when I was 11.
Yep.
And then I started having sex when I was 12, which is way too early. So by
Yep.
the time I'm 12, I'm already addicted to sex and pornography and food.
Yep.
And I have some anxiety issues and, fear,
Yep.
running fear. I was bullied the whole time through grade school and
For sure.
middle school and even in high school too, which is interesting because I was a fairly popular kid as I remember. But, I think one of the worst things I remember is one of the guys on the football team while I was showering and we were showering together, we all shower together
Yep.
as men.
Yep. I remember.
Washing my hair and, he started urinating on my leg while I was washing my hair.
What?
So anyway,
Oh.
and because because my parents never really taught me to defend myself, and because I was so
Yeah.
anxiety riddled, I just didn't defend myself.
Yeah. You just took it.
So literally,
Yeah.
like most of my life,
Yeah.
And it's interesting because if you would look at me from the outside, my mom taught at the high school that I was at. Like I said, I was a pretty popular guy. I played football. I did track. I was I was lineman of the year my senior year. I was New Hampshire Defensive Player of the Year for football.
Wow.
So you wouldn't have seen any of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Meanwhile,
Yeah. It was a storm under the water.
Yeah, but the storm is brewing. But like I'm actually like it's actively brewing. Like I'm, I'm still eating whatever the heck I want because I'm working out. It's fine.
Yeah.
I'm having sex with girls. I'm fooling around with girls, and
Yep.
I'm reading my dad's magazines, anticipating him buying another one.
Yep.
So anyway, left high school, went to college, went to one of the top liberal arts colleges in the country, Hamilton College, and then lettered in football for 4 years there, lettered in track for 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, got a great education, but I barely made it out of college. I mean, the only people that didn't graduate higher than me were the people that dropped out along the way.
Okay.
I think I graduated second to last because that's when my emotion muscles really started to pick up,
Yep.
And so I got out of college. My dad died the next year at 49. And so he didn't take care of himself and had single bypass surgery and died of a pulmonary embolism a week later, 2 days after Thanksgiving.
Wow.
It's the first time he told me that he loved me, actually.
Wow.
2 days he died. Yep. I mean, he did loving things, you know what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah.
But, when he could,
Yeah.
and so anyway, so then that was tough. And then, in I think he died in 91. So in 95, I started having some really serious emotional issues, anxiety and stuff like that. And kind of pushed him down, but I'm still doing all the things that I was doing before, I mean, literally in the middle of Boston one day, a woman was performing oral sex on me while I was out at lunch.
I'm with you.
Yeah. That was that bad. You know what I'm saying? So
anyway,
I was making a lot of money. I started, and the thing is I grew up with a poverty consciousness because we didn't have a lot of money and I always wanted to have money. So I was making $100,000 a year by the time I was 28. I was doing well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but I was a mess. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
for sure.
Mess. You know what I'm saying? And I'm feeding all my addictions as much as I can. And so I got married when I was 30, and I married the wrong person, and so did she. But we have 4 kids.
Yeah,
we're amazing kids. And so, but I, because I was not in a good place, I cheated on her many times. And then, 2005 and 6, I did some real estate investing. It was a little crazy back then. Back then, it was the Wild West with respect to mortgages, right? And
sure. Yeah.
Anything you want. So, my partner lied at about $15 million worth of mortgages.
Wow.
My marriage was crumbling. And, I was involved. I mean, I wasn't trying to steal money, but I wasn't exactly being a good steward. And so one count of mail fraud. And it took me 5 years to find out if I was going to prison or not. I got a call in 2008. My mom had died in June of 2008 at 64. And so by the time I was 40, both my parents had died. We're in Texas, away from family. My relationship is a train wreck. I'm not being a great dad. And then, my former partner calls me and says, "Hey, the FBI wants to talk to us." I'm like, "Why does the FBI want to talk to us?"
Yeah, that doesn't sound good.
Not a conversation you ever want to hear anybody say. So, I'm like, okay, I called, got an attorney. He was a great attorney. He was former assistant U.S. attorney for New Hampshire. And so, but it took me 5 years to find out if I was going to prison or not. And so it's funny because I was on The Biggest Loser in 2006 and season 3. I lost 160. Yeah, it was cool. So I lost 116 pounds. And then I gained it all back the next year, went to 415.
Whoa.
And then, oh, wait, it gets better. Or it gets worse. It gets worse. I thought I was around 475 pounds, but as I look back and do the math, I think I was well over 500 when I went to prison.
Wow.
And it was interesting because my first day of prison, they get dropped off because it's a white collar crime. And, they take all your clothes, they do everything you see on TV, and then I get the suit, whatever, the one suit until you get your clothes, and it didn't fit. It only zipped up to my belly button. So anyway, so, between 2008 and 2013, really unsettling. I signed all the divorce paperwork when I left on the 13, and on Valentine's Day of 14, I got an email that says, "Hey, we're officially divorced." So I got out of prison in 2014. I had lost 138 pounds, so I was back down to 338 pounds.
Wow.
Okay, yep, it's been interesting. So now here's the thing: I went to prison, and I can tell you more about this. I spent a lot of time with God, reading the Bible, learning a lot about myself, but I did not work on any of my issues, other than losing weight.
So what does that mean? I appreciate what you just said, and I think it's packed with a whole bunch of stuff. What is it that you feel like now that you should have been, either based on what you said? It sounds like you think you should have been working on something different. What do you think you should have been working on?
Well, my relationship with God first, and forgiving myself, and and basically releasing all the stuff that was causing me to eat a ridiculous amount of food, to want to watch pornography, to have sex with women. No, I basically just got all pushed to the bottom because I was trying to just make it through prison.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. So anyway, I left prison. I was in better shape mentally and emotionally, and then I was not allowed back in my house. And since I'd lost so much weight, I needed everything, right? So
yeah,
I had like two containers full of stuff in the garage, one of which was a flat screen TV with no electrical cord, which was kind of a metaphor for my life at that point, right? So any sense, right? Yeah. And so one of the guys I worked for let me stay in his house. People had to buy me food, they had to lend me a car. The guys from church bought me clothes, and if you've never had anybody who wasn't related to you buy you underwear, it is a very humbling experience.
Yeah, humbling, for sure.
Very humbling experience. And so I got back to work, and things were going well. And then my relationship with my kids was mangled. Yeah. So it's taken a long time to get right with them. Yeah. And actually, I literally just getting right with one of them now, 10 years later.
Good.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's great, but it's things come up at the time they come up. She was a lot younger when I went, so it took longer for the stuff to manifest itself. So then I met a woman in 2015.
Okay.
And she was very attractive, and my belief that I was going to meet somebody who would love me and whatnot, my self-esteem about my own self my self-esteem at that time was not good. And so I started liking her a lot, and I stayed with her for 4.5 years, and it was very toxic. And she was married, and then was gotten divorced, and unfortunately my thing was married women, because it was easy when you're hurting to find somebody else hurting. It would be easy to connect with you. So which was not great either. I'm not proud of that either. But anyway, I asked her to move down to marry me. I gave her a nice engagement ring, and then in September of 2019, I'm like, "Hey, can you you got to move down here. I can't do this anymore." And she said she didn't, and then she kept threatening to kill herself. And so I called her sister. I'm like, "Hey, your sister's telling me she's killing herself." And she's like, "Oh, she's like that." That's I'm like, "What?"
What?
And she's such a drama queen. I said, "Well, that much I know." And she says, "I'm surprised you guys are still together." I go, "What do you mean?" Well, she goes, "She's with so and so." I go, "Her husband?" You know what's coming here, right?
Yeah.
I go, "She's with her." What? She goes, "Wait, I thought they get divorced." She goes, "No."
Oh.
like, what? And so I found out that day that she'd been married the entire time we were together.
Wow.
Yep. And so I'm like, okay, that one took a while to process, but in October of 19, I was actually sitting in this place,
Yeah.
my office here. I was sitting in the leather chairs, looking out, like I got this French door, and I can see like the orange light of the garage light, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna kill myself. Like I can't do this anymore.
Oh.
I just can't. I was like, it was like the last bad decision of thousands of bad decisions, and I'm like, I'm thinking, how am I going to do this? And I went through all kinds of scenarios, and either it involved somebody else or I didn't have enough of whatever to do it. And then all of a sudden, God's like, hey, remember when your dad died, how horrible it was for you and your kids? I'm like, yeah. He says, do you want to do that to your kids? I'm like, no. And I'm thinking about it. And, he says, there's people that are going to need your help. And then that lasts about 15 minutes. And all of a sudden, my aunt and uncle called. My aunt says, we need you to come to New Hampshire because your uncle needs knee surgery. And we need you to help take care of us.
What?
It's like, okay. Just like that.
Delivered a phone call to get you out of where you currently were to go serve somebody else? What?
Right on time.
Praise God.
Yep, right on time.
Wow.
Yep. I'm like, okay. So went to New Hampshire. The thing is, I had found out it was later after October, but it was. I went and found a psychiatrist. I went and found a nutritionist, and I could be a dietitian. I could be the only person that has gotten fired by a psychiatrist and a dietitian in their entire life.
You got fired by the caretakers? What happened?
Yes. When you get fired by the people who run the zoo, it's not good. Well, here's what happened. I had to go take care of my aunt and uncle.
So you couldn't participate because you were no.
I could.
Okay.
I was away and I couldn't give the time and what they wanted me to give them while I was gone.
Okay.
And so I was there for a couple months. I came back and, they're like, hey, I didn't even get calls. I just got emails. They're like, you're not doing what you're supposed to do. We can't help you. You're done. I'm like, okay.
Wow.
So it's probably March of the following year. And I had become like suicidal at that point.
Yeah.
And so I literally was trying to just keep my mind together. I mean, I was going to bed. Basically, I was getting up about 5 minutes before I had to work. I would put a hat on or I'd just do my hair. And then as soon as my calls were done for the day, I went back to bed. And then I'm like, I got to find somebody to help me with this. And so I finally found a therapist in July of 2020 who is a good Christian woman. Nice. I didn't look for a Christian counselor per se.
Yeah.
She's a good Christian woman. And, we worked together for 2 days a week for 3 years and she saved my life. And,
wow.
God was in the conversation. It was, we talked about a lot, but, and then, the guys at church, I started volunteering more at church and going to church regularly. And, the guys who took me there, one of the elders and the associate pastor have become great friends and they helped me get through that with my therapist. So it was good, but it was a long road.
That is that is an incredibly long road. And, and the sort of the darkest days are really not that far behind you. Relatively speaking, right?
Yeah, the best days of my life have literally been the last 4 years of my life.
So, two things. The best days of your life, what kinds of things are happening that are fundamentally different than the way they used to be?
Well, a lot of things. I don't look at pornography anymore.
Okay.
I haven't looked at pornography in probably 5 years. It's amazing. I'm not having indiscriminate sex with women. I'm not even trying to say things to them to get them to have sex with me.
Yeah.
I don't, and I gotta have conversations. And sometimes I get those thoughts. And I'm like, hey, can you please help me here? Like, because I don't feel good about it now. You know what I'm saying? When you, I'm like, oh my God, like I've had like seriously, like sitting there, and even sometimes when I pray or I'm at church, and those thoughts, like
for sure,
Satan's like, come on, brother, let's go. Hey,
Yeah.
and so I just, I just ask them for help and stuff like that. So the food thing, and I would say 2 months ago, finally, I've gotten that under control. I've lost about 45 pounds in the last, 9-10 weeks. So that's good.
That's congratulations. That's hard to do.
Well, no, mind you, I'm 6'3".
Yeah.
I'm a big man. I'm a big man. 4 pounds a week is not a big deal for me. You know what I'm saying?
Well, wait, hold on, just a second.
Listen, I weighed like 420 pounds. If either of you lost 45 pounds a week, 4 to 5 pounds a week, you'd be going to the doctor to see if you had cancer. Okay, Like, for me,
Yeah.
it's not. It's like 1% of my weight. That's all. It's a big deal, but it's not like, it's not. It's a good deal, but it's not one of those things.
Yeah, I mean, it's not Biggest Losers numbers, right? Per week.
Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. When I say not a big deal, meaning it's not unhealthy for me.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. And that's where I was coming from, was what was the accomplishment side of it, understanding what you've struggled with, and so.
Right. So you're familiar with "Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind."
Finally.
That's where, but it's a very powerful, a very special, and it's a beautiful process. After the darkest of night, the dawn begins, and it'll come full circle. So all the appreciation, the gratitude, after living through the darkness, you're starting to walk in the light, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, absolutely appreciate that. And just, and to your point, just being cognizant of the fact that what I'm going to do, is this what God wants me to do?
Yeah.
Look, do I still swear sometimes? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And, for sure. And I have to, that's one of the things I'm still working on, but I figured that versus all the other stuff.
Yeah. It's kind of funny when we all sort of end up being somewhat convicted of all of the things that we're probably not doing well. Many people who are introspective enough will go, hey, look, I can't do it all at once. I got to do a little at a time.
Well, I remember somebody said to me, they were like, he was a drug addict, and he said one day, listen, this is just too heavy for me to carry. I need you to help me carry some of this. And I've asked him to do it before, and he's done. So,
Yeah.
But anyway, so I'm working on the weight thing, which is great, and I'm feeling a lot better.
Yep.
And I'm and what's interesting, fellas, this is the interesting thing, is that I spent my life, and I don't know if you know this about people who have traumatic childhoods, but a lot of us don't want to deal with our own crap.
Yep.
Because it's too painful. So what we'll do is we'll find peace and happiness and satisfaction by helping other people.
Yeah.
So I spent 23 years of my life helping people create great lives for themselves, getting them through the toughest times of their lives.
Yep.
While I was literally letting my soul rot. So.
Yep.
That's so now I'm doing those things for myself. You know what I'm saying? I mean, admittedly, listen, I have the YouVersion Bible on my phone, and I have a children's Bible on my phone, because I'll read stuff and not get it,
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, the thing that sticks out most to me is everybody's all about Philippians 4:13, right? I can do all things through God who strengthens me. But I'm like, I like what's before that. Like, hey, listen, I get a chance to thank you. Right? Listen, I've had nothing, I've had everything, and I know that I can get through it all. Basically, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter what I have. I know that I'm going to be okay, and that's really like the story of my life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I appreciate you sort of putting a nice pin on it, because what I was going to ask you is, knowing where you've been, and knowing where you are now, two questions come to mind. The first is, over the next number of years, where do you see God taking you? And then the other question that may even be a little bit easier to answer is, if other people who are watching or listening have been systematically watching the wheels fall off the wagon for their entire lives through a series of really bad choices along the way, and addictions and struggles, what advice would you give them to help them get through it?
Okay. Well, let me answer the first one first. What do I see God taking me? So, I've decided that I wanted to start dating again, and you can imagine after because of somebody.
That's a minefield, man.
Yeah, you would avoid women like the plague, and so I went out and after 2 years of doing work on myself, I went and started dating a little bit, and that just was terrible.
Okay.
And I had to learn some things about myself, but so. After 3 years more of that, I just started dating. In fact, I went on a date last night with a nice Christian gal. You know what I'm saying? And we had a good time.
Good.
And I want to just bring this up because I think this is important. Like, when you're somebody who, how can I explain this? Like, who has not had faith in God your entire life.
Yep.
Letting go of the need to try and do everything yourself, and to work your butt off, and success is driven by me, and not asking for guidance, and it's hard. I still have to work at it, what I'm saying? And
for sure,
I may go weeks before I'm like, oh God, okay, wait a second, like because it's just so foreign to me, what I'm saying? I mean, because look, my dad died. God and I were like, we were on the outs. I'm like, you know what? I'm 23. My sister's 19, my brother's 17. I'm like, we're done.
Yeah.
which is interesting because my old Latin teacher became a priest and he came to the house the day after to explain everything to us. I'm like, this is all crap. You can leave.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Anyway, so, but yeah, that's, so it's, meeting a nice gal, having, a nice, Christ-centered relationship with a woman,
Yep.
having businesses that still thrive so I can do well and take that money and not just take care of my family, but also, make some donations and things like that. But ultimately, I'd like to be able to start doing some more speaking, and kind of share my story with people, and because I think it'd be helpful. You know what I'm saying? Because and there's people.
I will tell you what I've heard so far is a huge encouragement to me, and I appreciate you sharing that, because I think that the humanity of it, this back and forth that you're talking about, like, hey, like I didn't spend my entire life in deep in faith. Let me let you in on a little secret. Those of us who did grow up in a Christian home and going to church regularly waxed and waned in our own faith as well. I mean, not everyone has that. And when you come out and just overtly say, "Hey, God and I were on the outs," I think we can relate to that. And I think that that's the part of your story, or one of the parts of your story, that I think other people need to understand and hear, because we can sit here and we could commiserate a bit with you and go, wow, I get it. And if he made it through the challenges, man, then there's hope.
Yeah, that's
remarkable. You're remarkable.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
You have a wonderful personality. I love listening to you.
Okay.
You got humor. You're very
single?
knowledgeable.
Are you single?
You just got a great personality to speak. I love to hear you speak, and you have a lot of experience.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and I speak now, but it's all on like real estate and stuff. I can't, once a month or so, I do tell my story and help people overcome what I've come over. But
yeah,
I appreciate that very much. Thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Just to kind of give you a better idea of like how bad it was. I would go to church. I would go on retreats, but I would be engaging in sexual activity with girls at retreats for church.
Yep.
I still remember going to a retreat in Manchester, New Hampshire at the Oblate House, and they were going through teaching kids to talk to God and to let their feelings out and stuff like that. And everybody in the room's crying but me.
Yeah.
I'm looking around, I'm like, why am I not crying?
Yeah.
I couldn't, I'm like thinking, so I was, that's how bad it was. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, so the point is, I'm at a point now where, I'm still figuring some things out. I mean, my relationship with God got better in 2010 because I got baptized. I was baptized already, Catholic, but baptized at the church that I was at. And so
good for you.
Thank God I had those guys, to walk with me up prison and then after prison. But, I would say, the last 5 years, it's been pretty strong,
Good.
I mean, the first words in my book are, I want to thank God for, everything. So that's like the very first words in the introduction of the book, just to make sure that.
Yeah.
Some things, God will use all things for good to those that love him and are called to according to his purpose.
Right, absolutely. But when you say that, it's interesting because, and I don't know what Bible verse this is, but and I see this is where it's weak. I know it exists, but
that's okay.
It says the essence of it is be grateful for everything that happens because it all serves God, right?
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, when you are grateful for the good and the bad, there's really nothing that can hurt you because you know that it's there to serve something, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So you probably know the verse. I don't, but
that's all good.
I'm saying so. Like, I mean, I'm like, I'm gonna explain this. I'm kind of like the expert on just enough, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Look. Yeah, I'm encouraged by the faith that you have, and the demonstration of those acts of faith. This is a very active thing in your life, and I'm really encouraged by that. Whether you know a chapter and a verse is not nearly as important as your personal relationship that you have, and you've demonstrated, right? You are having these personal conversations like, dear Lord, take this away from me right now because I don't know what to do with it, or hey, tell me what to say next because I will put my foot in my mouth. This constant conversation you're having, that is amazing, and it's awesome to watch.
I appreciate that, and sometimes I'll do something like, I'm sorry.
Yeah. You're like the rest of us, man.
I can honestly tell you, I have seen, I've done some things, and I have seen, I don't know, maybe not like a vast, vicious punishment, but I've had things that I was expecting to happen that didn't happen. I remember one time I forget what it was. I said I lied about something because I was a liar my entire life.
Sure.
So sometimes it just comes up. I mean, I really work hard to live a life of integrity, and I would say I hardly ever lie, if at all. You know what I'm saying? Because it's so important to me not to. But I think I lied about something.
Yeah.
And then 2 days later, somebody called me and said, "Hey, I can't do business with you." And I'm like, okay, well, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but hey, let's assume it was.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's no neon light on it, but it kind of feels like this. It's a correction.
Close, you know what I'm saying? But I really try and redirect my thoughts, and I'm I apologize. I'm grateful. My prayers and stuff like that.
Based on your own experience, if you were to go back and give a person one piece of advice that feels like, look, this is the end. I can't take another breath because I can't handle the pressure I'm under, the frustration that I have, and the bad decisions I continue to make, and the repercussions of the bad decisions I keep making. What would you tell them?
The first thing I would say is that the problem's not going to resolve itself on its own.
Okay.
Because unattended to mental health issues, which is what those all are. They only get worse.
Yeah.
Okay. And the brain's tricky because its job is to keep you alive and safe.
Yep.
And you also have like a negativity bias, which allows you to avoid things that are scary, but we also have the ability to push things down.
Yeah.
And when we push it down and it gets unresolved, and our brain's like, oh, I forgot that I let you push that. But you got to bring that back up and do it.
Let me remind you.
Yeah, then you push it back down, and your brain's like, oh, we still got to deal with it, right?
Yeah.
And you got people who can't sleep at night, and they have depression and anxiety, and they ignore it. You know what I'm saying? It's interesting. I just have a scar here, so I don't think you can see it anymore.
Yeah.
Used to be a big scratch here. I was chasing my dog, and I fell and scratched my arm. What did I do? I ran inside. I washed it off. I scrubbed it, cleaned it, kept it clean and dry.
Yeah.
You get a pain here, you just ignore it. You know what I'm saying? We let it get horrible. So if you ignore it, it will continue to get worse and worse and worse. It's not going to get any better. Okay. And the only way to get leverage is look, you can hit rock bottom. I don't recommend it.
Yeah.
It's much longer. What does Zig Ziglar say? He says there's the elevator, the escalator, the top is broken. You got to take the stairs, you know?
Yep.
So, but the thing is you've had enough experiences in your life where you can go find one thing that was painful and just use that for the leverage to make the change you need to. Ask God for help, and then you got to take action. I'm currently talking to somebody right now who desperately needs my help. And I'm trying to get him to take a course that I have because I'm going to teach him some things to rewire his brain.
Yep.
And he wanted to do it. And he said, he says, I got to do it. And God, I've been talking to God. God, wants me to just put my faith in him. And I'm like, did you ever think that maybe God sent me?
Yeah.
Did you think I was what God sent you?
I'm in the rescue boat, buddy.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
come on in.
You can't, and there are miracles all day, every day.
Sure.
And this is something I've yet to be able to find a way to pray out of. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You have to do the work for yourself too, right?
Yep.
Listen, I prayed to God, please help me lose weight. I prayed to God, please help me have money.
Yeah.
Be in position for all
this notion of inactive faith and just imagining it's all going to happen on its own is not faith at all.
It's troubling.
Yeah, I mean, active faith is, hey, I heard what God asked me to do, and I'm going to do it diligently with the discipline necessary. And
we went back and forth for days, and he's like, he says, maybe you're helping me, or maybe this is Satan sending you to trick me. And I'm like, dude, you gotta chill, man. I'm like, and the thing is, his problem is when you get into that spot where you're so anxious and you're so nervous and depressed and stuff like that, you can't think straight,
Yeah.
So to finish the answer to your question, like, just grab one of those things and let it be the lever that you need to go get some help.
Yeah.
And to ask for help, and just say, listen, pray to God, ask him for direction, ask him for help, but then go get some help, because it's not going away on its own.
Yeah.
It only gets worse, and it could lead to severe depression, anxiety, PTSD, and even suicide.
Yeah.
Because it has to resolve itself. So.
Yeah.
So, does that make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely does, and I appreciate the rawness of what it is you're saying. You're so close to it, right? Some people's story is 40 or 50 years old, and they've lived a lot since then, and it's not quite as vivid. Yours is much more vivid, and the urgency I can hear it in your voice, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, but you don't. Here's the thing. To your point, I don't think you need to have had an absolute train wreck of a life that I have.
Yeah.
But because I've had people like who, and again, it's different for everybody, and but I've had people I've helped who became perfectionists because they got made fun of in gym class one time.
Yeah.
And basically, as an adult, their hair extensions, eyelashes, teeth, dermabrasions, nails.
Yep.
$1,000 clothes, $1,000 purses, just so they can be perfect.
Yep.
So, but it's, look, and I'm going to sound like a bad person here, but if somebody's smoking, if somebody's drinking, if somebody's severely overweight, if somebody is doing drugs, if somebody's watching pornography, like there's something going on inside, right? You don't drive. Listen, you've never driven by in a house and looked at the front yard and had cars on blocks and a bunch of toys and trash and walked inside and had it look like the Taj Mahal, right? Yep. It looks just like it does on the outside. So, right, that external whatever is a physical representation of what's going on the inside.
Yeah.
And it's not going on its own, and it's only going to get worse if you don't take care of it. And so ask for some help and then go get some help.
Yeah.
But if you do see the Taj Mahal and you go inside those doors, you hear yelling and screaming and everybody.
Exactly. Exactly right. Then everybody's got their what do you call it? Their filter on or whatever. They're not.
More lipstick on a pig.
Yep. What do they say about how much you polish a turd at the end of the day?
It's still turd, yeah, for sure. So, hey, Wally, if other people hear this and see this and say, you know what, I really need to figure out how to connect with Wally and share my story with Wally, and maybe Wally can kind of work with me and help me out. Yeah. How do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so it's the easiest way is just go to my website, triggersalesystem.com. You can actually schedule time in my calendar right in there.
Okay.
I'll give you, if you're freaking out, my cell phone number is 214-334-1356. Just text me. I'm on the phone all day, so it's hard for me to pick it up. At 214-334-1356. You can text me and I'll talk to you. And then my email is wally@triggersalesystem.com. So whatever they want, and here's what I tell people, give me 10 minutes. I need more than 10 minutes, but in 10 minutes, I can tell you exactly what it is that's causing you the problem. Because a lot of people don't relate. I work with people that call reluctance, perfectionism, procrastinations, imposter syndrome. They can't pick up a phone to make calls. They keep dating the same kind of person. That's they can't keep a calendar. They can't go to the gym. They can't stay on their goals. It's all related to that stuff. As a child, and a lot of people don't see that. Being made fun of or bullied as a kid now keeps you from having great self-esteem as an adult, because you basically just watered and fertilized that negative idea your whole life, where it's now your identity.
Yep.
So they can reach out. I'm happy. Listen, there's no charge for any of that either. I'm saying I'm not asking for any money. We can just talk.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to talk to them and tell them for sure.
That's amazing. Thank you very much for sharing God's story in your life. And
hopefully I gave you what you needed today. I just I don't.
You didn't give me what I needed. You delivered what God asked you to deliver. I think that's an amazing thing.
Okay, I appreciate that. Yeah, this has been amazing. And if there's anything I can do for you guys or anybody else, let me know. I'm happy to help out.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, man.
You're amazing.
Yeah, likewise. You are too, guys. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you for joining us on Testimonies of Triumph. We hope today's story inspired and encouraged you to see God's hand at work in your life. A special thank you to our amazing engineers and production team at Waldrop Communications for making this show possible. Until next time, keep walking in faith, and remember, God's grace is with you every step of the way.